Hello, you magnificent bastards! It's your boy Mitch. Glad you could tune in. And today's video is all about YouTube's favourite sociologist, Dr. Layman. Now, just so you guys know, I'm not doing this because I hate Layman. In actuality, I quite like Layman. We are acquainted in some ways, and I watch his content. I enjoy his content. So much so that I bought this here t-shirt. Just so you guys know, alright? Now you see, Layman did a recent video about why the left will win YouTube. Now, if I remember correctly, the title itself is actually a clickbait title that he asked his fans to vote for on Twitter, so some of it is a bit tongue-in-cheek from what I can gather, while the rest of it is literally his own opinion. So, he kind of did it for dare, but it's an interesting thought nonetheless. I disagree with a lot of it. So, just so you guys know, this is not out of hate, this is not out of butthurt, kind of like how V felt in his video, even though V made some very good points. I'm going to try and be as nice as I can, but I'm going to, you know, poke fun at him a little bit, like before, but it's all good-natured. I have no bad feelings. So, without further ado, let's start the video.
Hello, you magnificent bastards! I'm glad you tuned in. I'm Dr. Layman. And to make a long story short and summarize the entire point of this video so you can tune off and watch some anime or something like that, many traditionally anti-left, and I'm using anti-left very vaguely here, many traditionally anti-left channels are dying out, while many sort of new left channels are growing pretty strongly at the moment.
And here we have our first problem. Anti-left channels, Layman. Yet the examples you use are very fishy. For a start, Thunderfoot, The Amazing Atheist, Vernaculus, Mohammed Skeptic. None of them are right-wing, none of them are anti-left. They are anti-far left, but they're not anti-left. The Amazing Atheist, Thunderfoot, and Skeptic are perhaps the most left-wing in that group that I listed, while Vernaculus is more to the centre. But even then, I think that Greg is also closer to the centre than, say, TJ and Phil are. The only other two that are definitely anti-left are Computing Forever and No Bullshit. They are the only right-wingers that you've put in this entire section. I would also like to point out that No Bullshit has literally done videos that can be considered anti-skeptic. I mean, he did the Fall of Sargon videos for a reason, and also appeared on Coach Red Pill streams about the problem of the skeptic community for a reason. So the idea that he is somehow part of this so-called skeptic community is laughable. Yes, he is an anti-left channel, but in no way is he affiliated with any of this group that he has somehow been put alongside with. I don't know if that was Layman's intention. Also, as you will hear in the video near the end, Thunderfoot is another one of those, but on the opposite end of the spectrum. Also, the whole anti-left thing, well, considering anti-SJWs or people who are of that persuasion, like myself, are mostly left-wing.
And overall, I think it's very likely that, at least on YouTube, right now, we are witnessing the rise of the new left.
Apart from 3 Arrows, all those other people that you show as an example of the new left are not new left. H-Bomber Guy, ContraPoints, and Sean and Jen are SJWs, so they are literally the bedroom feminists that you'll soon talk about, but with higher production standards and a bit more money put into it. I mean, Sean and Jen is no different to any of the older people who I used to fight back in the day. The only thing that has actually changed is the production standards. Other than that, there's no real difference. It's the same ideas, just put in a different package. And even then, they aren't the only ones to have had very high production standards. But I'm going to get ahead of myself, so let's just continue.
For thousands of years, we fought each other. We fought each other over land, resources, beliefs, and some of the most fundamental questions there are. But nowhere has this battle been as savage and horrifying as on YouTube. And I hope you appreciate this absolutely lovely visual effect, thanks to Laythought.
Rapier cooks get the bullet too.
Fuck Verdun. Fuck Stalingrad. YouTube debate is where it's at. be it the encirclement of the creationists in 2009, the SJW massacres of 2014, or the skeptic civil wars of 2017 and 18, YouTube has shown time and time again that only the fittest survive.
So what's he saying? Basically that YouTube is... So basically what he's saying is that YouTube, at least in the political side of things, it ebbs and flows. It's in cycles. And that I do agree with. There is an historical precedent for that. However, where we differ is where the precedent currently stands or where it is changing to.
Now, all of that was just a hook to get you interested in this video. But it still actually is somewhat of a good summary of my point. For a very long time now, at least on political YouTube, anti-SJWs, for the lack of a better word, and various right-wing movements have been in a dominant position. To many of you watching this video, it's probably kind of natural that there are no bedroom feminist videos anymore, and instead you have dozens of feminist wrecked compilation part 30-fucking-6, stab on the feminists, stab on the feminists. But as we'll see throughout our little journey through the history of political YouTube, all good things must come to an end, and the current numbers seem to indicate that, yeah, right now we are right in the middle of such an end.
Really? You just mentioned that if you search that term, you get all these wrecked feminist compilations. You get all the videos done by people criticising feminism and social justice and the far left, and all the bedroom feminists who were basically the amateurs, the foot soldiers, are now gone. Although, I'm sure if you actually dig deep, you will still find them, just that maybe some of them have changed course or doing something else, or actually converted to a different political ideology. A lot of them did. For example, Rage After Storm. That this end is nowhere in sight, especially when you bring into context events from the wider world and on YouTube itself.
In order to understand what I'm talking about here, we need to refresh our political YouTube history a little bit. It's really complicated to make definitive statements about political YouTube because of its really volatile, fuzzy and short-lived nature, and because there's basically no useful research available. But I'll do my best anyway. Let's go back in time a little bit. It's 2005. YouTube just started out and things are much different to what they are now. Video quality is much lower, there's a crap ton of family content, and a lot of the content of the time seems somewhat weird to a contemporary viewer. The interesting thing, however, is that pretty soon a noteworthy religious community appears in the political parts of YouTube, namely Christians. They aren't really harmful or even interesting for that matter. That is until many, mostly US American atheists, start using YouTube to just rant about things, talk about their beliefs, network a little bit, or even directly challenge pre-existing Christian channels. Welcome to 2007.
Now that's not actually how it happened. Yes, the creationists were there first. No, creationists, not all Christians are creationists, hashtag not all, but that's not exactly how it happened. You see, what happened was this. There were the Christian channels, and then there were the creationist Christian channels, and it was the creationists who had the loudest voice. In fact, they had the loudest voice in society at that time. And this was the main platform, among others like Blip TV and Dailymotion, other places like that, where they would spread that propaganda, where you would see re-uploads of people like Kent Hovind and all the famous preachers you can imagine, and politicians who advocated for intelligent design and creationism in schools. And these people were also making their own content as well. And there were people like Nephilim Free and Venafang X who were despicable characters. And the atheists came in and didn't just challenge some peaceful, largely unremarkable community. No, this was a vibrant Christian community who were pumping out propaganda about creationism and wanting to, increase the role of religion in American, and if they were, even Europeans also wanted to increase its role on the state and society. Levels of which is not very healthy for a liberal society. And that's what the atheists were challenging. They saw this not being challenged. And in real life, we were seeing the new atheism movement beginning, and this was just part of that era's culture war. This is a very reductionist, almost biased view from Layman, almost as if he doesn't really understand what actually happened, or he's been told a point of view that isn't the full story. I can't actually tell, but his history is all wrong here. The atheists didn't just walk in and make an unprovoked attack on the Christians. This was something that was spilling onto the internet from the wider world, and the fact that this propaganda was essentially being unchallenged. And yes, I know some people who are religious in my audience will argue that the atheists were using counter propaganda. Yeah, well, it's called a debate. They had their argument, the atheists had their argument, and we all know who won. But that's what actually happened. Because the creationists were making stuff that wasn't true. They were saying things about science wasn't true, society that wasn't true, atheists that weren't true. This is political YouTube, remember? So people are trying to change the neutrals' minds. And if neutrals aren't getting the other side of the argument, that's not healthy, is it?
For a good 4 years, atheism will be going really strong on YouTube. This will also be the time that arguably one of the largest atheist channels, The Amazing Atheist, or by now TJ Kirk, will start out. Slowly but surely, Christians will lose their grasp on the platform, until only a very few nutjobs are left. This is not only because of some sort of superior argument on the side of atheism, but also because of a ridiculous degree of confrontationalism in the then atheist community.
Why are you putting all this on the atheist community? The ridiculous confrontation also came from the Christians. This is one of the few times in YouTube history where two communities that were as toxic as each other. Again, I mentioned people like Nephilim3. I mentioned people like Venom X. Brett Keane, who was on both sides of the argument at various points before eventually becoming a God believer full time. That man was a noted doxer and harasser and abuser of the flagging system. And Venom X was also somebody who tried to dox and do some nefarious things to such an extent that Thunderfoot and other atheists had to contact his parents to tell him to stop. He was that bad. And there are still Christian channels, but they tend to keep to themselves and talk with each other about religion rather than debate these days. Although you do see, like you say, the nut jobs like Dean Esme, who's actually new. He wasn't actually an original Christian channel. And again, he's only talking to his own side, unless there's drama involved with the honey badgers, that is. Others probably gravitated towards the anti-W content, much like some atheists did. But again, I'm getting ahead of myself. Continue, Layman.
Debate me! Is a meme born during exactly this time.
Again, I don't really understand why he's bringing up these stereotypes. It's such a reductionist argument. In fact, a lot of his arguments are reductionist in this video. The same can be said of the Christians. Hell, look at fucking Dean Esme. He looks exactly like that. Just he's a Christian.
Now here is where it gets really interesting, and it may sound eerily familiar to some of you. There's a limit to how often you can say, God not real, religion is doo-doo, but before it gets boring to the people listening to you. Combined with the fact that almost no good Christian targets were left on YouTube, the atheist community began to stagnate, and eventually gave way to new things.
You're also forgetting that the culture war was won at that point. Because, believe it or not, the atheists did have the superior argument. They did actually argue correctly and prove their points that, yeah, creationism isn't right, it isn't true, the Bible can't be used to be taught alongside science, and kids shouldn't be taught that shit. They won, and they also curbed the influence of the political religious right, which were influencing society in a negative way. And you're also right that yes, if you say things loads and loads of times, it gets boring and people get sick of it and want to move on. But you've also got to realise that's also because, again, the Overton window shifted. And if people keep saying that, people are like, yeah, we know things have changed now. Can you think of something else? And actually the atheists, as you will soon mention, did start to think of other things.
Now it's the year 2012. Due to a lack of common enemy or interesting content, atheism starts properly splitting up into Atheism Plus, what would later on become Social Justice Tube, and Skeptic Tube.
You also fall into the trap of community labelling. What exactly is Skeptic Tube? That in itself is a nebulous term. At least with these other communities, you can definitely see that there is a distinct group with shared ideals and values, whereas with the Skeptic Tube, there actually really isn't beyond a few key issues, really. Also, again, it wasn't really due to the lack of a common enemy that allowed the feminists to come in and split the atheist community. It's a lot more complicated than that. They were already there during all of this. In fact, if you read The God Delusion by Richard Dawkins, he mentions PZ Myers by name. They just didn't have the numbers to try and change the atheist community and the atheist movement in America and Europe at large. And eventually, they did get the numbers. It was mainly due, again, to feminism and social justice's parasitic nature. Atheism Plus is dead. And it didn't just split into Atheism Plus and the anti-SJWs. No, it splintered into many different groups than that. There were people who were neither anti-SJW or SJW. They just wanted to talk about skepticism and being skeptical of other things, because they didn't just have a lack of things to talk about. There were many things to talk about. Psychics, superstition, Islam, things like that. There were loads of things to talk about. Hell, even conspiracy theories and other stuff like that. Woo, for example. There were loads of things to talk about, and these things were always debunked and discussed in those circles. You don't really seem to have much of a education on what actually happened.
Something that would later on become anti-SJW tube. This whole shift is really fuzzy and not nearly as crisp as some people make it out to be. There's many new creators joining the platform, many old ones leaving, some channels stuck with their atheist shtick, some channels went skeptic way before it was cool. It's overall just a mess. And the following 2 years is what I'd call the golden age of shitposting. You had all those different and weird flavors on political YouTube, social justice proponents, bedroom feminists, all sorts of activists, anti-SJWs, and so much more. And everyone's screaming at each other. It was fucking hilarious!
That's not what 2012 to 2013 YouTube was. That wasn't a golden age of shitposting, really. In fact, from what I've seen, it was the atheist community basically dying off because the Atheism Plus debacle lasted for quite a few years. They were currently fighting themselves, and the embers died pretty much in late 2013. And also, with people going skeptic before it was cool, they probably already called themselves skeptics, but in a different way. Remember, the term skeptic didn't once mean somebody like Sargon of Akkad, or whoever is an alt-right, or whoever isn't an SJW, basically. It used to mean a person of the ilk of a Christopher Hitchens, or a Richard Dawkins, or a Daniel Dennett, or a Sam Harris. That's what they meant by skeptic. I just thought I'd clear that up.
This whole thing kind of culminates in Gamergate in 2014.
Not really, no. That's not how Gamergate started, and you probably should know because you were around during that time. I don't think you were either anti or pro Gamergate. I don't remember your stance, but it's pretty clear you don't understand the history. This golden age of shitposting did not culminate into Gamergate. In fact, it was the opposite. In many different communities, on many different websites, and hell, even in real life, we began to see a shift towards the far left, and we saw that there was increased censorship, and increasingly SJWs and other people who are of the far left persuasion were abusing the flagging system and abusing their power because, yeah, these people run Twitter, they run Reddit. I mean, have you heard of Chairman Powell? They used to run 4chan even. And that's what culminated into Gamergate, this rampant censorship, this attempt to change the internet from what it was to what it might still be slowly turning into now, a sanitized commercial thing, which will cater towards bourgeois values of Americans and Brits and Canadians, take your pick. The boiling point of all these things was the Five Guys burgers and fries thing, which later became Gamergate. That's what it is. It wasn't this golden age of shitposting which culminated into Gamergate. That's not the case at all. It was in fact a pushback to preserve this golden age of shitposting,
which saw most of the social justice content on YouTube, for the lack of a better word, massacred. Within just a year or so, bedroom feminists, just girls talking about their everyday understanding of feminism or their everyday experiences with sexism, were gone. Feminism altogether, and much of social justice content died out.
Yeah, but that's not true, is it? Yes, a lot of people were bedroom feminists, but does that mean that people like Jenny McDermott, Bewildered Ape, Laughing Witch, are they considered bedroom feminists? Because they used their bedrooms to create content, yet these people have been known to be amongst the most censorious, disgusting, immoral people to have ever graced YouTube. And let's not forget that we had people like Old School Lacey Green, MTV Decoded, BuzzFeed, Now TV, Al Jazeera Plus, God knows how many other people that I've forgotten about. The Angry Aussie. People like that, who are still going, by the way. Later Green may have changed, but the others have not. And they had big budgets to work with. Hell, PBS, with the gaming show and the ideas show. They were big media attempts at pushing social justice. It wasn't just bedroom feminists. Hell, if you watch Sargon's old Dakra videos, corporations were pushing this. And it all linked to people like Anita Sarkeesian. It wasn't as simple as that. It really wasn't. This is reductionist and not painting a true picture of what actually happened.
Now it's the year 2016, the presidential elections are in full swing, and it's the great meme war. And when you search for feminism on YouTube, you get dozens of Feminist Wrecked by Facts and Logic compilation part 13. And everyone's obsessed with reason, facts, logic, owning the libtards and whatnot.
Can you ever not use a stereotype to make an argument? It's just a gross generalisation, Layman. And again, considering most of these people are libtards making this content, not actually right-wing, kind of defeats the point of your argument, doesn't it?
Now, similar to the atheist community back in the day, during the last 2 years, anti-SJWs or skeptics or whatever suddenly saw themselves confronted with a pretty sad realization. Their enemy is largely gone from YouTube. Sure, you can still respond to news articles, respond to Steve Shives with the Young Turks for the 20th time, you can respond to real-life developments or blog posts, but there's a limit to how often you can say feminism is doo-doo before it gets boring.
You're right, I've already agreed with you on this statement, but the fact of the matter is, you mentioned real-life events. People are always going to be interested in that, because it's their real life. People who watch political YouTube are interested in things that happen socially and politically in the meatbag world. That's just how it is. Due to the nature of real life and how things change and how news works, people are always going to flock to videos to see somebody's opinion on that or to see somebody report on that. That's why Tim Pool, Lauren Southern, other people who are gonzo journalists, like Laura Loomer, for example, have become so famous. Or Milo Yiannopoulos. These people aren't new left. Although you can argue Tim Pool could be considered a new leftist of a different variety, which I will explain later. Yeah, apparently that is going to contribute to the saturation of anti-social justice far left content, really. Considering that this stuff still is embedded in society, in your country, my country, even America with Trump. Trump isn't doing anything really about what's going on in colleges and academia and schools. I mean, he's repealed Title IX, but that's literally about it. Nothing else is changing. Canada still has Trudeau, we still have May, and God knows what's happening in Germany and Sweden and all those other countries. They're basically fucked. This shit is still relevant.
And it's during this time that you saw the rise of two more or less new waves of content creators, the new left and the new right. I know these are really bad terms because they're historically kinda loaded, but let's just use them for now, I'm lazy. The new right can be classified as taking existing anti-SJW talking points to a sort of extreme. Concepts like race, immigration, gender roles and tradition suddenly stand in the spotlight.
But the thing is, that's not the new right. That's not really how that works. They've not taken these anti-SJW viewpoints to an extreme. They happen to agree with people about those issues, but then they have their own opinions on tradition and gender roles and society, how it should work, what's the best ideology. They couldn't be any different. That's not taking all these things to an extreme, because the anti-SJWs, for lack of a better term, weren't like that, because you had some on the left, some on the right, some in the centre, some who didn't even use those terms to describe themselves. So again, it depends on who you're thinking about. You're talking about the right-wing side of that, not the left version, not the centrist version, but the right-wing version of that, which I would agree with you on, but you're generalising everybody.
While the new right definitely is a big winner in all of this, the real star of this transitional period is, in my opinion, the new left. Content creators that are a weird sort of mixture of skeptic and social justice proponent.
What is a skeptic? You've not even defined that term. I've already made videos on why I think it's a loaded term that is nothing more than a pejorative at this point. And like I said, it means different things to different people in different times, in different contexts. What you mean is somebody who is anti-far left. How exactly these people who are the new left are an admixture of both is beyond me, considering these people that you mention use the exact same arguments as the bedroom feminists. There is no difference. It's just a different delivery.
They use academic research to make their points and try to make their videos visually appealing.
Well, so did some of the other older SJW channels. They also used academic research, faulty academic research, which is exactly where this lot get it from. They all use the exact same sources. You, as a person who's all about sources, should know that. People like ContraPoints believe in the 1 in 5 statistic and the wage gap and things like that. They all believe in that. That is actually no different. How is this a new left? Why is it that it's these people you've arbitrarily decided to label the new left, when there are other people who are also left-wing, who are also rising in popularity, who are in no way like these people? My most prominent example that I can think of is Louis Laveau. I know he's not as big as ContraPoints, and he's not as big as Sean and Jen, but look at him. He's left-wing and he's nowhere near like them. He's the complete opposite.
Often making real-life appearances themselves or heavily borrowing from the existing skeptic style of video. And to make this really simple,
how exactly do they borrow from a skeptic style video? What is a skeptic style video, Layman? You're not even defining it. Because everybody has their own interpretation of what that is. I don't even have one because I don't think it's even real. In what way are they similar other than the academic research thing? Which, by the way, everybody uses academic research to some degree to formulate their own opinions. That's not unique. That's not new. That's basic shit that people do.
The new left right now is in the same position as atheism in 2007 or anti-SJWs in 2014. They are faced with a sort of weakened cultural hegemony that's already kind of in decline.
I'm sorry, but have you seen the governments of Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Britain, Germany, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, France, Ireland? Apart from Eastern Europe, they're all SJW influenced, whether on the left or the right. If you're in Britain, you've got a conservative government that is the strangest mishmash of political ideologies I've ever seen. Socially, they are SJWs, but economically, they're the same old Tories they've ever been. They fall down the same traps that the SJWs fall down, which has led to things like Rotherham and Rochdale and Telford recently. And in France, they have literal no-go areas policed by the military. In Sweden, they have a rape epidemic. In Germany, it's similar. How exactly is anti-SJWism the cultural hegemony? How? Maybe on YouTube, there's some kind of social hegemony, but it's going nowhere. The alt-right failed to destroy that because it's a nebulous thing. It's something made up of loads of different types of people. You can't actually destroy something like that. And also, if they are facing this hegemony, why is it that people would want to go back to the same ideology that they wanted to get away from? Why? Can you explain that?
And they can score incredibly easy points, especially because the existing status quo, essentially 4 years of domination, made huge chunks of anti-SJWs or skeptics extremely lazy. When you can say, feminism is doo-doo, and get your Patreon money, why should you try to improve yourself?
Who's not trying to improve themselves? Again, it's this reductionist argument where you have to reduce everything to its simplest form in order to make your point. Because you know that it's not as simple as that. Yes, there are channels who are primarily entertainment based or not very academically bright, but then there are others who are putting the effort in to, improve their knowledge, to improve their argumentation, and you can see that those people are growing or have large audiences. For example, Teal Day. He's somebody who puts a lot of effort and work into his research. I don't always agree with him or like him even, but you can see why he's become big. Sargon, for example, as well. Even Thunderfoot for a while.
Anti-SJWs or skeptics on YouTube have become decadent, lazy, and worst of all, boring. And now they are slowly being replaced by new waves of creators.
Who's being lazy? Can you give me any examples? Are you going to be brave enough to give names? You've already mentioned names, but none of those people are decadent or lazy. Would you call vernaculist lazy? I can give you TJ, he's definitely lazy. He basically fucked himself over by leaving the Drunken Peasants, but that's his own decision. That's his prerogative. Thunderfoot as well. But everybody else? Would you not say that the new left that you've arbitrarily designed are lazy for using the exact same arguments, hoping for different results? Are you sure these people are usurping them? What if they're simply just creating new echo chambers? Maybe the new subscribers that they're getting are other far leftists. Maybe this is the new generation coming onto YouTube who happen to be far left and are just simply joining them. Maybe there's a few converts, because there are people like David Sharat, Sean and Jen allegedly, and others who have switched sides. Are these people essentially preaching to the choir, or are they actually convincing neutrals? Because from what I see in the real world, they're not really challenging any hegemony. They are the hegemony, and people are sick of it. That's why Brexit happened, or at least will be happening.
And this is exactly where we are right now.
Kamera läuft. Alex, die Kamera.
Oh, fuck. Oh, fuck. Oh, hi. I didn't see you there.
Hey, Layman. You're a thick boy.
So I think that before we move on, we have to address two things real quick. The first one is just how vague many of the terms and ideas that I'm using in this video are. And the sad truth is that without existing academic research, it's really hard to make definitive statements. And really vague terms seem to be easier to understand than concrete ones.
I agree that they actually are very vague, and it's good that you've seen that, but I don't agree that a vague term is easily understandable than a concrete one. I just disagree. I think the more concrete a term is, the easier it is to understand, the harder it is to warp. But that's just my opinion.
So if I say, for example, a YouTube skeptic, everyone at least has some idea what I'm talking about.
Well, no. The problem is, it's a subjective term. But then there's other people have their own stereotypes. Because to the alt-right, they're just a bunch of leftists or right-wingers who are cooked. To the alt-left, or the new left as you call them, they're just a bunch of fascists and Nazis and conservatives. While to people in the centre, which is probably what they actually are, in the centre-left, these people will probably think that they're trying to reform the left, that they're the new left. Or at the very least, the old-style left of a bygone era coming back to reassert itself, while the centre-right are basically trying to regain power and to combat what they think is too much hegemony from the left, and that has corrupted society. That's probably what they see these things. See, there really isn't one single thing that people can say is a skeptic. And again, if you go back 10 years ago, nobody was thinking like this.
Now, speaking of skeptics, there's this really interesting phenomenon that ties itself into all of this, and I'd like to call it the skeptical fish swarm. You've got a somewhat tightly knit group of people where everyone kind of knows each other, or at least knows about each other. Everyone's kind of dealing with the same topics like feminism, Islam, free speech, immigration, social justice, and so on and so forth. The visual style is similar, the video style altogether is kind of similar. You get the idea. But the second you point this out, especially in the last year, the fish swarm suddenly scatters, as if they're trying to avoid a predator. Suddenly, everyone's an individual. There's absolutely nothing to do with anyone else, except collaborating, sharing and reviewing video ideas, picking similar targets and talking points, and organizing in all sorts of weird Skype and Discord cabals. Yeah.
Is that any different to our Discord groups, Layman, that we're a part of? Like Babylon, oh well, Babylon's gone now, or The Swamp, or Tales from My Wife's Son? How is that in any way different to, say, a Skype group that I'm in with Bane666AU and others, or the old one that I used to be a part of, the B-List, which I think is still around, I'm not sure. I know what you mean by Skype cabals. You mean the YouTube blackout thing, which I was also in. That was not a cabal, that was not anything like Games Journals Pros. That was something that Harmful Opinions did to smear them because he was on a absolute bitch fit after being treated kind of harshly and wrongly, in my opinion, during the whole Candid debacle. But he had no right to attack Bane66A, even though those other people in the YouTube blackout thing, which was simply going to be a protest, which I personally told people was never going to work, because how are you going to get the whole of YouTube to black out against YouTube, which is basically to boycott it for a night or a day. I forgot what it was. It was never going to work anyway. That's really all it was. They were trying to fix YouTube. They did it because they wanted to make a statement. Not that they were trying to coordinate things like, this is our next target, this is the next feminist target or something. Like, no, that's not what it was about. It was about a protest. It was coordinating a protest, not some ideological thing, really, if that makes any sense. And I think the reason why these people will scatter and say, oh, we're all individuals, is because maybe they don't like being associated with other people that they either don't like or don't think they see much in common with. Even though, yes, from the outside, they do have something in common, but maybe there's not a lot actually there.
This contradiction between what you as an observer can, well, observe and what people think of themselves makes things really awkward and makes this video really difficult. And take all of this from someone who's been in the middle of this whole skeptosphere thing for a good 4 years by now. I've been invited to dozens of secret Skype or Discord cabals. A good 10 or maybe even like more people have tried to contact me to get me to work with them in order to destroy someone else. And just generally, I've seen a lot of the background stuff happening with my own eyes.
Yeah, so have I, and I've been in some, but others I've decided, no, I don't want to touch that. And that's your prerogative. Maybe they just wanted to talk to you. Maybe some of these other people were not just interested in destroying, they just wanted to talk. They wanted to have a place where people can have ideas to discuss. I mean, what was the idea behind Babylon, Layman? What was your idea behind that? Because that's literally no different, right? What is the difference between you and your fan base and say me and my fan base, or Sargon's fan base, or ContraPoint's fan base, or anybody's?
Now, the second point, besides the skeptical fish swarm, is that I'm not primarily talking about those guys when I'm talking about the new left. Marxism at the moment just doesn't have the required cultural appeal to really do something on YouTube. And I mean like proper Marxism.
But Zexizi and Jason Unruh, they're growing. And they're benefiting from some exposure. So how exactly are they not relevant where they are actually to some extent relevant? Again, it's mainly due to the fact that they've just packaged their ideas in a easier to digest, perhaps more visually appealing format. But again, it's only appealing to people who are Marxists or already have sympathies towards that. It's not going to appeal to people like me or you or anybody else for that matter, because it's Marxism.
And let's be completely honest here, cultural appeal really is what this whole political YouTube game boils down to. Most people want entertainment, they want thrill, a sense of purpose and progress, they want their beliefs affirmed, and they want spiciness.
It's true, you're right, they do want things like that. Cultural appeal is very important. Then that's why the bigger channels like Shoe on Head, Greg, Sargon, and even newer channels like Declan Black, other perhaps older ones who but are getting bigger like Oozaloo, Zoe Does Life, another so-called skeptic YouTuber, has blown up recently. Whenever she gets a shout out or she makes a video, she gains a lot of subscribers. She's doing very well for herself. And we're also forgetting that the algorithm might be favouring these new left people rather than the people who are further to the right than them, even if they themselves are also left-wing. Because remember, we're seeing subscriber glitches and algorithms and the limited ads thing. We know for a fact that the limited ad state does affect your views. And we have seen that YouTube does curate its own content. So it wouldn't surprise me at all to see that the reason why these channels are growing and maybe the...
Now, just a seemingly repeating historical trend alone doesn't mean much. We have to look at the numbers. And to make it short, most established anti-SJW or skeptic channels are not doing well. I've selected a few big ones here, so feel free to pause the video and give it a closer look. And while anti-SJWs are not doing great, new left channels are booming and feeding off the corpse of their predecessor like some sort of super woke vulture. And especially videos directed against the alt-right or the skeptosphere seem to be really popular these days.
Notice these are views per month, which, as we know, ebb and flow depending on what video you might put out one certain week, or what video you might put up even that month. Now, Three Arrows has shot up, but ContraPoints, who's been doing this for quite a while, she's been going since 2011, and Sean and Jen, they show typical YouTube channel statistics. They're going up, they're going down, they're going up, they're going down. They keep going up and up and up, then they plateau, and then they go down. And you can see that it's no different with the so-called skeptics. There's literally no real difference other than Three Arrows, who's an anomaly. And in fact, you don't really seem to show the actual subscriber numbers, which, as V showed in his video, they're mostly in the green for both sides, apart from TJ. Everybody is growing. But the thing is, why they are growing and who is subscribing to these people is pretty much something that can't really be explained.
Now, anti-SJW, or skeptic channels stagnating, seems to be a pretty consistent trend across the board, but there are two main exceptions we have to acknowledge.
But it's not. V is still growing. He's literally almost there to 100k, and he's always grown slow. He only really started growing after Sargon gave him a few shout-outs. Even then, we're still seeing people like Easy On Me, as well, who isn't a comedy channel, grow exponentially.
Comedy and controversy. Let's start with comedy. Channels like Chris Reagan. Channels that focus heavily on entertainment, at times even doing a catchy song or something similar. Creators in this group often share similarities in how their videos are structured and performed. They often take inspiration from other mostly entertainment YouTubers like H3H3, iDubbbz or PewDiePie. And yeah, these political channels seem to be doing really well, but, and this is a huge but, this whole thing can be explained pretty easily. It's not some sort of deep political or scientific insight that's at the core of this kind of content. Sure, it may be part of it, but the defining feature of this content is that it's meant to be entertaining first and foremost, and there will always be a market for this kind of content.
Doesn't that contradict your point? These people are growing exponentially while still serving the same message as the less entertainment-focused channels. Personally, I don't think the numbers that you show actually show a stagnation. It's just lower growth, which can be to do with a lot of other factors rather than people getting fed up. Maybe a lot of the views and the sub numbers are being affected by the algorithm because people are not seeing the content. YouTube themselves are saying that they're purposefully not showing our content to our subscribers.
And then there's controversy with channels like Black Pigeon Speaks. This category also seems to be going somewhat strong at the moment. The visual style of the videos is by and large similar to classic skeptic videos, but in some cases far more polished. And contrary to the comedy creators, this group thrives on being hardline, providing a very hard stance for or against something, usually backed up by academic literature and usually falling under the category of new right content. And it's this hardline approach that seems to be so appealing to many people that, in my opinion, probably became disillusioned with anti-SJW content or the skeptosphere. They heard feminism is doo-doo one too many times, and now they want to hear race mixing is doo-doo for the first time.
And this is the biggest mistake in your video. The biggest misrepresentation you've ever done, and you're not usually somebody who would misrepresent a YouTuber. This shows such terrible education on somebody that, Layman, I couldn't believe it was from you. Black Pigeon Speaks is in an interracial relationship. He's married to a Japanese woman. He's not really alt-right. Yes, he might share some common ground on some issues, maybe, but he's not like that. He isn't somebody who thinks race mixing is doo-doo, otherwise he wouldn't race mix and live in Japan, would he? He did what they can't do. But you know what? You probably just don't watch enough of his content, don't really know him, and that's fine. I'm not going to be like V and, get all personal about it, because I don't know him. I don't know Black Pigeon Speaks, but those are the facts, man. Sorry. You done goofed.
Making predictions is always kinda wonky, and I may be completely wrong here on everything that I said, but we can still pretty consistently observe a sort of historical repetition on political YouTube. A culture rises because it offers some sort of cultural appeal. Maybe it even is a sort of counterculture in the grand scheme of things, but eventually though, it becomes stagnant, repetitive, and boring.
That we're in agreement. However, considering the times we're in, I don't see how the anti-far left content is going to go away anytime soon, considering the state of a lot of countries, including America. How is that going to bring back SJW YouTube? It isn't. These are just individual channels that are big, bringing back all those old viewers into their fold. They're just preaching to the choir. They might get the occasional convert, but other than that, we're not seeing massive amount of neutrals flocking over there, are we? We're not really seeing that. It's just a few channels doing well. I mean, there's always been channels that have done well. I mean, H-Bomber Guy doesn't just do politics, which is why his inclusion in this, I thought, even though he does think like that and he does make videos like that, was a bit suspect because he also does gaming videos and that probably gets him a hell of a lot of views. I think, actually, they get him more views than his political content, if I'm correct, from what I've seen. Some of his biggest videos have not been political at all, just about the games. You can't just say that, you know, the anti-SJW arguments are getting boring, but then somehow say that, oh yeah, the new left, they're not boring, even though they're saying that the patriarchy is doo-doo, and that feminism is great, and all the other bullshit that they used to say back in the day and still say now. Like people constantly hear that all the time in mainstream media. How the hell is that not boring now? Why would people want to return to that? You never really explained that. Nor have you actually explained how the left is going to win. All you said is that a few channels are getting bigger, and some other channels have experienced some slow growth, or even decline, even though there's only one channel that I can see that's actually declined. Yeah, I don't know. Oh, another thing I forgot to mention, guys, is that Thunderfoot is no longer a skeptic YouTuber. He left a community that he was never really a part of because he never really indulged in it that much. He was on a few streams, but other than that, he kept to himself, didn't he? Everybody knows that. But I'm going on with myself, Layman. Let's move on.
A culture, then, that often defines itself in opposition to the former, capitalizes on this weakness and eventually largely replaces it, while survivors move on to other forms of content. Rinse and repeat. That's the whole story of political YouTube.
I fail to see what this new left is taking advantage of. Every time they've been in these live debates with skeptics, they don't win. Their arguments aren't strong enough. Their ideology isn't strong enough. It doesn't stand well on its own 2 feet. So, again, how?
And this historical trend seems to be happening right now. Skeptic or anti-SJW numbers are down, new left numbers are up.
We're only using a small sample size, and I don't think this sample size of big channels is reflective of what is actually going on.
Skeptics on YouTube, generally at this point, have a somewhat bad reputation, while the new left seems to have improved the perception of certain topics like feminism or social justice since the day of social justice tube.
Nobody likes SJWs. Normie YouTube takes the piss out of them. People who you wouldn't expect to start making jokes about that are making jokes about that. PewDiePie, H2H3, Keemstar, Plossel's Crazy even. Constantly I would see them say, I don't mean to sound like an SJW, but this. Nobody likes social justice warriors. Nobody, other than social justice warriors. So I can only say that they've only made it look better to the people who already believe in what they believe in. Everybody else on YouTube is not interested. And as for the skeptic thing, yeah, I have seen that. There is a reputation thing, but let's be honest, it's only a minority of people. And they're trying to be cool, they're trying to be edgy, or they are the ideological opposites.
And they have done a pretty incredible job when you think about it. Just a year and a half in the past, it was basically unthinkable to have a video that's pro-feminism, anti-capitalism, or anti-alt-right maybe even, without just thousands of dislikes.
Videos that are still anti-alt-right, regardless of who makes them, still get a lot of dislikes, Layman. And as for the dislike ratio on ContraPoints' videos and some of these other bigger channels, well, they've got a bigger audience who will like more of their videos. And let's be honest, it's always been a minority of people who go and dislike the videos. And even then, when you look at mainstream media outlets and when you see propaganda pieces being put onto YouTube by corporations, they get massively downvoted.
But looking over political YouTube right now, it's a much different story. Now, in all of this, I've been using anti-SJW/skeptic as a sort of directly opposed force to the new left, as if there's no middle ground. But the truth is, there are many content creators out there that are self-professed leftists, or at least consider themselves to be somewhere in the middle of things, whatever that may be. And I'm really not trying to say that those people are inherently right-wing because they oppose certain contemporary leftist ideas.
I get that, Layman. I get that, but you did generalise a lot and you've used a lot of reductionist arguments, as I've pretty much pointed out here.
And yeah, there you have it. Historical trends and the current numbers seem to suggest that the golden age of anti-SJW or skeptic content on YouTube is at an end.
Again, what golden age? I don't even see the SJWs having a resurgence. It's literally a small group of big YouTubers. That's literally all it is, and ContraPoints has always had an audience. Sean and Jen has always had an audience. Plus, let's not forget that they signal boost each other. You can see it with Kevin Logan and Christy Winters and others. Literally, they're in their own little groups and they share each other's videos, and this will eventually reach other people on the internet who think like they do. It's natural that they're going to reach hundreds of thousands of people. Meanwhile, what the anti-SJWs did was reach people without having to signal boost at the beginning. They didn't do that. Quite the opposite, in fact. They managed to reach people from outside. I mean, I got into this through a fucking football forum, a soccer forum. That's how far that reach went. At least even in the very beginning in 2014. That was in 2014. Look what's happening now.
While the new left creators are steadily gaining ground, both in terms of numbers and in terms of public perception.
They're not. Nobody likes them. Nobody likes them though. Nobody. Except themselves. Nobody cares about them. Nobody thinks, oh, I like SJWs now because their videos look nicer. That is just so fucking retarded.
And if 2007 or 2014 repeats itself, we'll see almost the complete death of anti-SJW tube or the skeptosphere. I'm Dr. Layman. I can't wait for all the comments calling me a libtard leftist for pointing out a repeating trend. Glad you tuned in, and as always, Babylon prevails.
And there we have it. That's Layman's video. Hopefully I wasn't a nasty arsehole to you, Layman. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. I know we're going to disagree on this, and I do get a bit passionate, so don't worry. If I get passionate, I'm not doing it because I dislike you. I do it because I love you. That sounds really gay. But regardless, I really don't see, other than the numbers, I really don't see a change in public perception of them. I really don't see them gaining ground. Their ideology was already entrenched to begin with, and nobody has said that this is going to be an easy battle that will take nothing more than a couple of months to a year. No, this is a culture. Culture wars take a very long time. It took the Four Horsemen decades to win their culture war, and it's going to take us decades to win the culture war. My personal opinion is they're simply just gaining more people who already thought like them. They're gaining probably Lacey Green's old fans. They're probably gaining a lot of old fans from channels that switch sides, or maybe Generation Z, the left-wing versions of them, are gravitating towards those types of content creators, and those who aren't SJW are going towards content creators like us, or Sargon, or the alt-right. I think really what we're seeing is just a consolidation of ideologies. People are now just consolidating into their groups. The attempts to, disrupt echo chambers to bring about more dialogue, although debates have happened, it's not solved the problem of society becoming ever more divided along political grounds. I think that is what it's a symptom of. I don't think at the moment that anti-SJW YouTube is going to die just yet. I think we'll start to see that in the 2020s. But at the moment, no. It isn't. Because of the ground still being gained by a lot of the old guard and even new one. That's my opinion. And I would personally like to thank Dr. Layman, who actually offered to help me with this video, by the way, guys. But in the end, I didn't need his help. I've already got his help. And but thank you anyway, Layman. You'll be getting this video before everybody else, hopefully. I would like to end with my own Patreon message, as he did, or rather, fan funding message, and that is, guys, you really need to get off of Maker Support, because what has happened is this: Maker Support have come out and said that there will be no more donations, no more new accounts or something. They've frozen everything for 90 days because apparently the Stripe problem. Okay, they're still saying it's Stripe, and within 90 days we'll be able to get the money. Although I personally can't get the money because I can't verify my account, as most of you know. So this is another reminder. I'm not trying to shill, really. I'm just trying to get my old patrons on Maker Support back onto Patreon to save them their money and their time. But if you are thinking about donating, you can. It's up to you. But please do donate to that. Move your donations over there. I've tried and failed to find a delete button on Maker Support. There is none, which makes me wonder if it is a scam. But all I can say is contact your bank to try and sort that issue out, or do something. I don't know. But at the moment, I won't be paid any money for another 3 months, even though I don't actually get paid. It just gets lost in limbo. So anyway, that's the update. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It's been your boy Mitch, and as usual, Babylon prevails.